Thank you, Dr. Little. Appreciate it. Board members, just want to take a minute, just kind of give you kind of an e-learning at a glance. If we kind of just go back in time when we were in school, 10 years, 20 years, maybe more, when we had a snow day, inclement weather day, we just had fun. Didn't do any learning, nothing happened, and that's changed nowadays. And so we're very fortunate to have the capabilities. And so the concept of e-learning, we can now leverage time, space, and place with technology. So the advances that we have, and we think about what we've gone through in the last few years, students have devices from iPads to Chromebooks to MacBooks. So when there's a day out of school due to inclement weather, some pandemic issues, you can keep learning. And so e-learning days provide elimination of those weather makeup days. We still have them on the calendar because we're required to have those by state law. But those are kind of there as kind of placeholder days for us. But when inclement weather comes, we can do something different for our students. So we also have continuity of teaching and learning when a school or district has a switch to council school due to extenuating circumstances, as I just mentioned. So when those things come up, we switch. Teachers kind of change their method of instruction and teaching so they can help students at home, so they can keep learning. So if you're out a day, 2 days, 3 days due to snow, and it may happen, it feels like kind of that year, students will keep learning instead of waiting till they get back to school. And so calendar flexibility is also part of it. The one thing we wanted to make sure at the beginning of the school year was to let's survey our parents. Let's check on their connectivity. We can assume that students have access to the internet at home, but let's not just make that assumption. Let's do a survey and kind of get information from all our parents. And so this dashboard pulls the survey information from Power School, so at any point in time, any school administrator, anyone at the district office, or school technicians, they can go into this dashboard here by school and find out what level of connectivity they have at home, broadband, cellular service, any of those things. And we also have hotspots that we're able to give our families. And so all a family has to do is contact a school administrator, and they will complete a survey, and then the IT department will issue a hotspot to their school for students. So right now we have an abundance of roughly 22 hotspots available. 960 or so hotspots are already distributed to families that need them. So we have a nice cushion of hotspots available. We do know that broadband is still a better way to have connectivity, but in cases where you don't have that, you can reach out to the school and we can get a hotspot to you so you can have that connectivity to keep learning at home. And that's kind of that goal, is that although you're out, you have the ability to learn. Let's talk about how that happens. So for students, they're used to this in school right now. It's happening on a regular, every day, and they are accessing their learning management systems at school. And so in kindergarten through second grade, they use something called Seesaw. In third grade through fifth grade, they use Google Classroom. Sixth grade through 12, they use Schoology. That's their learning management system. That's kind of a hub where all of the instruction and materials are housed. So when a teacher needs to give an assignment for that day or for that week, that information is there for those students to refer back to that and find out what's happening. So when they're in school and class, that's what they refer to. So when they go home, they're already comfortable using that learning management system. And they can be independent and self-directed learners. So also students want to create an accountability plan for completing assignments, know what I have to complete on a particular day and when it needs to be turned in. Engage with, submit assignments through the learning management system. You can upload documents, you can complete a quiz, you can do all those things at home, and that's where you're gonna manage it through your learning management system, the LMS. And then complete outstanding assignments as necessary within the 5-day window. So say you lose connectivity, your power goes out. You have a 5-day grace period when you return back to school to complete those assignments. That's something that all teachers will follow and make sure no student has anything that goes without being completed. So you have that 5-day grace period to get those things done. So that's for our students. And so for teachers, they do this on a regular. Every child, when they leave school that day, they take the device home with them. And so that's a habit right now that's being practiced daily. They want to ensure students take a device home. Teachers got to provide explicit and clear communication with families, and sometimes a parent will get an email, let them know that this is happening for the day, and if they don't get an email, the child will get information through their learning management system too, as far as what happens. And then the one thing that we have now, and it's uniform almost across the board, is what we call a week at a glance. That gives parents and students a full summary of what to expect for that week in learning, so you can kind of prepare for it. So even though we may miss school on Monday, that week at a glance will give me kind of a roadmap of what my learning will look like for that week. And then the teachers will occasionally have those office hours available so questions can be asked when you reach out to a teacher via email, online office hours where they may have a Zoom link that a student can get onto at a designated time. So those things are there too. So a three-pronged approach: students, teachers, and finally parents. So it takes all of this to make it happen. So parents what they can do at home is identify that workspace. So yes, it's a snow fun day, but you want to also have time where you can get some work done and get those things. So identify that place in your house. Ensure your student has access to reliable internet. We talked about that in the beginning. I mentioned that, and making sure that's available. Monitor your students' daily progress. Sometimes just having a conversation. What did you do? What did you do today in school? What did you learn? What do you have for your assignments? Having that kind of ongoing conversation. And then if you have any problems, let's communicate. Reach out to the school, to administrators, to the teacher first. Check in with the school to see how they can help you, because that's why they're there. And then they can give you some feedback as quickly as they can. So that's kind of a glance of it. And so we had to put it quickly in action, as Dr. Little mentioned the other day when we had kind of high winds. But we emailed our principals took that message, and then they emailed teachers, and they pretty much was able to flip it from face-to-face instruction to make sure learning is happening through online type of learning. So that's a quick overview, and I'll pause for any questions.
Dr. Rivers, thank you. I can relate to when I was back in school here in Lexington. If we had a bad weather day, or a snow day or something, it would just be a fun day. And I'm so glad we have these resources. And obviously the way you described it is asynchronous learning. But is there a limit to the number of days we would consider doing this? Just because I think it's an excellent resource that we have here, but I think back to how many years has it been since that 1,000-year flood or something we had, and we were out for a while, or there was a tornado when I was a kid that came through, we were out for a while. So how long would we let this happen before we said, kids, you're out of school, and we'll make these days up?
Yes, of course, face-to-face instruction is our goal, is to get students back as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. But as you know, we got to recognize when it's safe, and so based on whatever's happening with weather and climate.
That. Yeah.
But this, honestly, is set up so that it can last as long as it's needed. And so we have technicians that are going to be available. We also, I didn't fail to mention, we have a help desk that is available at all times during the school day. So if there's a logging on issue at home, to make sure a student can kind of have that connectivity, or have questions about a password or username, we can answer those questions. So we want to maintain it as long as we need to, but not forever, but just as much as we can, and also to make sure students are doing it. So we are talking about asynchronous, but as things go on, and when an entire classroom or school is switched, then you can have synchronous instruction too. And so right now, when you have some students quarantined.
As long as they have internet.
Right, as long as they have internet. So when you have some students quarantined and some in class, a teacher can't do both. But when a school switches, or the district has to go to e-learning, and if it's over for a period of time, you can incorporate some synchronous type of learning. And that's when a school will send out a schedule, and then students will know what time to check in for that class. And so school day starts at 8, at 9 o'clock, you'll meet with your first period teacher, and so forth. So it'll give you a schedule where you can then check in to get some instruction from that teacher.
From I'm sorry, I was going to provide some additional context. Our e-learning plan, I think, talks about, so when e-learning was created, I think this is actually pretty good context on what we did on March the 3rd. If you'll recall, on March the 3rd, I actually we did a presentation on e-learning March 3rd, 2020. We did a presentation on e-learning, I think it was March the 3rd. It was that first board meeting in March. And we talked about, I think at the time, I think it was 5 days, that the switch to e-learning in terms of the whole district, I think we were talking about 5 days. I'm not sure if that was your question or not. But now with COVID, it doesn't really reflect that because it kind of depends on the individual school. So, because an individual school can't get off everybody's calendar. Does that make sense? So you don't want to have, like with Rocky Creek a few years ago, they had a transformer blow. And so we kind of had to do something specific and had to get some, this was prior to e-learning as an option. We had to get some approval from the State Department to kind of do something with their, like that half day or whatever. But again, I think from a weather perspective, if we're thinking about 5 days, that's probably kind of in a row is kind of like the idea. But I'm not sure if that was your question or not, but that's the one I answered. I'm not sure if that was.
No, yeah, no, I was kind of looking for how long would we go before we say, hey, we need to take a break. But it sounds like even Dr. Rivers was saying we would transition from the asynchronous to the synchronous, so that actual teacher-led direct learning could be occurring.
Yeah, those kind of things can happen, especially for longer periods of time, and even for those shorter periods of time, the teacher can still incorporate some of those type of synchronous teaching opportunities.
Asynchronous is typically easier for older kids, and then synchronous is typically easier for the younger kids,
Right.
is what we've determined. I mean, that's kind of common sense. I think that's played out for us.
Yeah, I think just in terms of general feedback, my middle schooler, with my high schoolers, they were, kind of in that exam review, so it was a little different for them. But with my middle schooler, when we got the notification about the transition, he went to a spot, he opened up, he got into his classes, and it was interesting to see that transition today from a year and a half, 2 years ago. I mean, it really was.
Yep.
It was quite incredible to see that. So, bravo to the team, bravo to the teachers, to everybody for being able to adapt in such a short amount of time when that sort of switch kind of flips. And even to the students, because I even noticed that he was more willing to reach out to a teacher. Very early in this, I think there was a lot of apprehension, like I'm going to bug the teacher if I email her, those kind of things. And there's a lot more comfort now that they seem to have developed as they've kind of done some reps with this. And so I think this is a great tool for us to have for a long time to come for the unknown of weather, transformers, whatever it may be.
And plus, it prepares them well for the workforce.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
that dysynchronous work is the way it's going.
And you're right, Dr. Guyton. I mean, like last week, my son is at River Bluff, and when they went virtual, he didn't even skip a beat in getting back in. He was up and he was signing into a class, that he had to be there for 8:30 in the morning. The teacher wanted to see their face. I mean, I think these students this is just part of how they're just accustomed to it. I would, a little bit of feedback from a parent, we're all figuring this whole e-learning package out together. But for, as a parent, making sure that I hold my child accountable. One of the things, I love Week at a Glance. That has been very helpful. But as with everything, different teachers, different subjects, it's useful to some, and some it's not quite so useful because of the subject matter or their lesson plans or whatever. I think it would be very helpful maybe to standardize, and anytime we can standardize something, it makes it easier for parents. That in specifically for high school teachers, and their syllabus that's on their Schoology page, to have a e-learning section where they define email instructions, or I will only post on Schoology, or you will need to look. I mean, just kind of because I'll start asking, hey, well, this teacher doesn't use Week at a Glance. She just emails us, or this teacher. And so I think if at the beginning of the school year, if the teachers could just define on their syllabus, because to me a syllabus is the roadmap to how that teacher wants the student to succeed. Their office hours, how to make up tests, all that kind of stuff. And that Lula section, or excuse me, e-learning section would just be very helpful, so that maybe a student missed the first couple weeks of school, they transferred in or something, and they didn't get those instructions. there's a place to go. You know, don't forget, we're going shifting to e-learning. If you don't know where to find my assignments, go to my syllabus and look under the e-learning section, and it'll tell you where everything is. I just think that standardizing like that would be very helpful. You know, my kid will be a senior next year, and he's kind of on his own at this point. But I just think that's some feedback that would have helped me the last couple of years, and knowing how to make sure that he was looking at all, you know, looking under all the rocks to find all the assignments that are out there. So just a little input there.
Certainly, I appreciate that feedback, and something that we'll definitely share with our school, and we try to have that consistency in place, as you mentioned, because that is key. You don't want to go searching for something when you go into your learning management system. Your schools you pay, so having it at the top in a central location so that a student can find it, because again, they're at home by themselves sometimes and not able to ask questions, so we can standardize that. That will be helpful, so we'll keep having those conversations.
Hey, this is Jada. Thank you. That internet access dashboard, are those self-reported? So they say, they just tell you, I have internet access at home? Or do y'all actually go through the rural broadband, you know, something like that to figure that out?
It's initially self-reported during the enrollment process. When families enroll for the school year, go through registration, we ask them at that time to indicate their connectivity status. We do occasionally follow up, especially if a family does not complete it. Someone at the school level will reach out to the family to verify that. But because it's real-time in Power School, it can be modified and changed at any time. So we want to have those conversations throughout the year. And especially if a teacher asks a child, do you have access? And then comes to find out they don't, then we can kind of update it in their system in Power School. So it's a very helpful tool, and it also helps us to know how many hotspots are out there already to our students, which families have one, and if they're using it too. And so we have the capabilities, even for technology. The one thing that I didn't share is we were able to see how many students logged on with a particular device on that day we were out. So we could give you a percentage of students with MacBooks and Chromebooks that actually went onto our network and were engaged with the system, learning management system. And so those are great features we have. So we're watching at all times in some way with IT. And with this dashboard here, we can constantly get information and have it updated.
Thank you. Yeah, I know, I'm sure you know as well. Some people may say, some kids may say, oh, I have internet at home. But I just wanted to make sure there was a way that, in case they were saying that but didn't really, that y'all have a way to check that. Thank you.
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Rivers. I do want to say you talked about calendar flexibility, and I just want to dig into that just a little bit deeper, because that allows us to have, remember a couple of years ago, Amy Wood started talking to us about creating some longer weekends in second semester to provide barriers to infection. Well, at that time, we were talking about the flu and stomach bugs and whatever the yearly thing was. And so the e-learning days, because the state department or state government has not allowed calendar flexibility, this allows us more calendar flexibility. So when you look in February and you see a 4-day weekend around President's Day, I think there's a 4-day weekend around March 17th. I don't know if that's a Ides of March Day, pretty close to it, whatever, March 15th or something. So you see all those different days. That is what allows us to have that calendar flexibility to make that happen. Okay, so we've, thank you, Dr. Rivers. We appreciate that very much.